Hi, I'm Tim Smith with the Adams County Historical Society, and today we're in the artifact room at the Wolf House. If you like the historical content that we've been putting up on YouTube and Facebook, please push the subscribe button and the like button, and share this video with your friends if you like. So, of course, we're in the midst of creating a new Adams County Historical Society museum, which will be called Beyond the Battle, because we are going to focus on the Adams County residents that lived here during the battle, but also the history of the county prior to and after that event that is so well documented in the history of our county, the Battle of Gettysburg. So this room currently is being used to kind of organize all the displays that will go into our museum. Our museum is divided into 9 different sections, and it's really we're 3 major phases of our gallery. Of course, we have prior to the Battle of Gettysburg, we have a large section on the civilians and how they were affected by the battle. And then we have a large section of our museum after the American Civil War. So in each section, of course, we have display cases and display panels with artifacts and photographs and text and maps that kind of illustrate the history of Adams County, as well as a few TV monitors and movie screens that we talk about different aspects of the history. So we have the items divided sort of in section, and I thought I would just share with you a few of the things that we have chosen to be in the museum. It's very difficult to decide what will be placed on display and what will not make the cut to go on display. Hopefully as years goes by, we can switch out some of the items, because sometimes you have 2 really cool items, but only one of those items can go in that place. For section 1 through 3, for instance, we have some really interesting stuff about the early settlers of the county. And one of the things in the box that I wanted to point out that we actually rediscovered when we were unpacking our storage unit. We knew that we had it. We just didn't know where it was until we located it with our new warehouse when we unloaded stuff. This is a book, and you might notice that was owned by the Reverend Alexander Dobbin, and he acquired it in 1791. And it's fascinating to me to know that this was actually part of his library, and of course what is now the Dobbin House in Gettysburg. There's also a mention in the book that it was owned by other people prior to him, and that he had acquired it in 1791. But if you look at the title page, you'll notice that this is a book about discourses on divinity, and it was actually published in London in 1699. Now, I'm not sure how many other written documents in our collection would predate that. Probably 0. But that is awesome to think about, that we have that in our collection. Also, we are fortunate enough to have a list of the early settlers of the Marsh Creek settlement. Now, this list was actually put together by 2 of the settlers in 1765. Now, this copy of the list, we believe, dates from the 1790s, this actual copy. But it's a copy of a list of the early settlers, their names, and of course here you can see Samuel Geddes right here on the line, and it gives the date that the property that they lived on in 1765 was first settled. So there was a settler here in the area of what is now Gettysburg as early as 1741. Whether that was Samuel Geddes himself or someone earlier he brought property from, that's a matter of debate. But it's one of the coolest items in our collection, the list of early settlers. You might notice on our table, we are constantly creating images for the panels that will be in the museum. And just recently, I had to pull this original photograph out of its frame so we can make a really, really nice scan of it. And this is the board of the directors of the GBMA, the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association, in 1887. And in our copy of it, each of the people are identified on the back, and that is John Batchelder. If you've never seen John Batchelder, the famous government historian with his really intense beard, and Nicholas Gage Wilson, who was the superintendent of the National Cemetery, and Dr. Robert Horner, a doctor in town at the time of the battle, tour guide William D. Holdsworth, David Beeler, who had died a few months earlier. They have his portrait in the image. John Lawrence Schick, the man who owned a store in the square of Gettysburg, and the man who claims to have smoked 21 cigars during the battle, one day of the battle, because he was so nervous. But it's just an incredible photograph of those members of the board. And of course, the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association, early on, largely made up of local residents, is the one who preserved much of the area around the town that would become the Gettysburg National Military Park. We have this soldier's record that was prepared after the Civil War. This is for Company B, 138th Pennsylvania Volunteers. And the man who owned this was in Company B of the 138th. And he actually wrote notations about the people that he served with, and with the outcome of that soldier, or if that soldier was killed or wounded. As a matter of fact, if we look, Keller B. Call, died in service, and of course he's the one who died at Andersonville Prison, and is buried in Andersonville today. But I also like it because he took CDVs of the officers in the unit and actually cut them out and pasted them into the spot where the officers' photographs are meant to be. So that's just an incredible item. We also have here, I put out on the table, this is a sign that hung in the square of Gettysburg during the 75th anniversary of the battle in June and July 1938. And we have photographs of a couple of these at different entrances to the center of the town in 1938. This one, of course, after it was stored away in a barn for many years after the event, but someone saved it, and this item will be on display in our collection. I wanted to point out that, in the early Adams County section, the development of Adams County, we have a section of the museum that's like 1800 to 1850. We are going to have this incredibly rare fire bucket. Christian Culp's name is painted onto it, a leather fire bucket. And when they organized a fire company in Gettysburg early on, the town council decided that every citizen of the town would have a fire bucket. And when the bell rang that there was a fire, each family in the town would come out to the fire, and whoever's in charge of the fire bucket would fill the bucket up, and they would all run to the fire and attempt to put it out. So every family was issued a fire bucket with their name on it, and they had to keep the fire bucket in a place, probably in the hallway, where they could grab it in case of a fire. And that's just incredible. Christopher Kolb, I guess, is how they pronounce his name. He is the one who moved into the area about 1786 and purchased the farm south and east of Gettysburg, but also had a house on York Street in the borough that he purchased from James Geddes, or purchased the lot from James Geddes. So we have a lot of things in our museum that will associate with citizens that were in this American Civil War from Adams County. And we also have items that are debris from the battlefield. This is a Whitworth shell. So there was only one battery of artillery in the Confederate Army at Gettysburg with Whitworth rifles. And so this is a very rare shell to be found around the battlefield of Gettysburg. It's a lot heavier than it looks, too. And so we'll have a bunch of shells on display that were discovered around the battlefield. And I should mention right under it, we have the Jenny Wade Candlestick, one of my favorite things in the collection. And it actually, in our archives, it has an original tag that came with it that was shoved down into the candlestick. And it said that this candle was used by Daniel Culp, I believe it was, at his carpenter shop on Baltimore Street to give him some light while he was finishing the coffin for Mary Virginia Wade, who was killed in the fighting on July 3rd, 1863. And she was buried on July 4th outside of her house in the yard. And you may know, if you've ever read about it, that that coffin was actually started by Confederate soldiers as a coffin for Isaac Avery, but then they were called away because the Southern Army was retreating, never finished it, and Daniel Culp finished the job using that candle. So it's kind of an obscure artifact associated with Jenny Wade, but it'll be really nice to go into the museum. We also have lots of stuff about the commercialization of the battlefield afterwards. Perhaps you know we have a rail from the Gettysburg Electric Railway and some spikes for the railway, which is the trolley that ran around the battlefield from 1893 to 1916. We have a tent stake from the 75th anniversary of the battle that's going to go in there. We have, I see, a Springs Hotel bottle that would hold the medicinal waters that came out of a spring into Willoughby's Run. And, of course, that's one of the reasons I'm always drinking water Willoughby's Run today, because it's got that good medicinal quality. And we got a bunch of stuff. Oh, I wanted to show you. We have battlefield souvenirs, one of my favorite things to discuss. And I don't know how many people are interested in them, but we have these little ceramic monuments that were made by a guy named Speece, who actually had a pottery and kiln just not too far from this building on Seminary Ridge along the Springs Hotel road. But Speece made little miniature monuments. Of course, there were several people in town that made desk sets out of artifacts that were discovered on the battlefield, and they would put these things together and sell them to tourists. Here's an engraved piece of canister and a bullet and decoration from an eagle and a piece of wood with a bullet hole in it that was put together as a decoration. Here's another one of the Speece monuments. Just in case you don't know, that one I just showed was a Massachusetts company, the Berdan Sharpshooters, and this is the 7th New Jersey Infantry. Colonel Louis Francine, of course, was killed in the battle on July 2nd, not far from the Peach Orchard. And since we're showing them in the box, there's one more in this box. We have quite a few of these, many more than we're going to put on display. But here is the 6th Ohio, 6th Ohio Cavalry. Of course, that monument, if you know, is on Pleasanton Avenue near the Tawnytown Road. So got quite a few souvenirs we're going to put on display. And just a few more things. Of course, we have lots of stuff dealing with our modern Adams County history, from a German helmet brought back by Adams County soldier from World War One. We have some World War II displays, and we're getting together stuff on the Eisenhower years. And I wanted to point out that at the end of the museum, we're actually going to even highlight Gettysburg in popular culture. So we're going to have things like rare paperback editions of the Killer Angels, but not to be left out, we actually have Martin Sheen's hat that he wore as he portrayed General Robert E. Lee in the movie Gettysburg.